أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربي أنتقنا بالهدى وألهمنا التقوى السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I begin in the name of Allah, the most kind, the most merciful. It's due to that kindness and mercy that we have these opportunities where we gather in remembrance and glorification of Him, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. It's nice to see friendly faces once again, Alhamdulillah. You know, when I looked at the schedule, it's like my Eid today, you know. It's become Eid for me. You know why? Because over there, I was getting 15, 20 minutes. And then I look here and I have till 9 o'clock today. Subhanallah, you know? Subhanallah, you know? Eid ho gaya, alhamdulillah. It's become my Eid. So please sit back and enjoy. And 40, 45, 50. Once you reach 40, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, it doesn't matter anymore, right? No, but alhamdulillah, you know, it's amazing that we're already at past halfway of Shahr Ramadan. You know, it's the 16th fast today. It's unbelievable how fast time has gone, and it's these moments where we have to take these moments to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to make sure that we have not wasted the first 16 days of Shahr Ramadan, right? And so we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts the fasts that we have completed. He accepts our qiyam and the qira'at that we have done, insha'Allah, and that He has raised our ranks over the course of these days, insha'Allah. And it's also important that we analyze our lives, you know. It's not something that we can just, I know sometimes we're at this movement of wanting to just come to an end, and I don't think we're that type of crowd who has that desire of wanting it to come to an end very quickly. But it's good to take a time to do some accounting of our lives, right now. And so I think at a minimum we have to look at our lives, and I think there are certain thresholds that the Prophet, for example, tells us, the Imma alayhimus salam tell us that we should be hitting no matter what. And so we should be all hitting the benchmark that none of us should be sinning in this month, right? At the very minimum, we should not be doing something haram in this month. So whatever it is, whether it is haram with my eyes, haram with my tongue, haram with my ears, I should be avoiding haram in this month. That's the very least, that's the expectation. And if I'm doing that, and if you're doing that, then that's a positive sign on its own, right? That's a positive sign. And these are things that we should be doing all year round anyways, right? Avoiding haram. But in this month in particular, there is greater hurma in this month, right? You know, like we've always, when we go for Hajj, for example, we always have these seminars before Hajj. And one of the things that I always try to remind people when they go for Hajj is that, look, when you're going for Hajj, you've been invited specially by God, and you're in God's house. Don't disrespect God by doing something haram in His house. Now obviously everything is God's house, but you understand that's a special invitation that you've gotten. Likewise, Shahru Ramadan is a special invitation that we've gotten. And we don't disrespect the host by doing something that angers the host in this month. And so we keep the hurma of this month by avoiding haram. And then we try to see whether, for example, I have done and fulfilled my spiritual rituals, right? So for example, Quran, how much Quran have I recited in this month? How much of understanding I have recited it with? How many du'as have I recited in this month that are not what we recite at mosque? Because what we are given at mosque is like the appetizer of the meal, you know what I mean? The real course comes between you and Allah privately. So take that time to connect with God in these different ways. How many Salatul Layl I've recited up to now? Right? That should also be something that we should be striving for, to try to constantly better ourselves. And so these are what I would call the JV level, you know, the junior varsity level, if you've done these things. But now we go to the varsity level, and we go to where the big boys play, right? And this is where fasting is not about hunger or thirst, right? Fasting is about controlling those other animalistic tendencies that we have within us. My anger, my desires, my thoughts, right? Sometimes we're people who don't do things which are haram, but our thoughts are polluted, right? And so we're disgusted by our own thoughts. This is the month in which we work to purify that, because if my eyes are not seeing things which are haram, then my thoughts should be more purer in this month. It's the eyes are the gateway to our thoughts, right? The eyes are the gateway to our hearts. So because if I'm working on the junior level of avoiding haram, then that should help me in my senior level of not having even thoughts that are corruptive in my mind, right? So it's important that then we graduate. And I think that many of us, in the conversations that I've had with people, this is where we struggle. We struggle with maintaining consistency with akhlaq, right? Especially consistency with akhlaq with people who, how do I put this delicately? With people whom I don't necessarily owe anything to, or people who I don't have to respect for obvious reasons. So for example, I have to respect my boss, so I'm going to have good akhlaq with my boss. But if somebody below my boss and somebody who I am a boss to, how do I treat such people in Ramadan? How do I treat my wife in Ramadan? How do I treat my children in Ramadan? These are the things where Allah sees the characteristics of the human being. And so, inshallah, that's where we are focusing on, especially this latter half. We should have focused already on the other aspects, and now we have this secondary aspect to focus on, inshallah. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the strength to follow through with our convictions and to do what is right, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So what we're going to do, inshallah, over the course of the next 10, 11 nights that I'm going to be lecturing, is going to be broken up into two. So the first, the 4 nights of the wafat of Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Ma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We're going to have a special series on that 4 nights, inshallah, and it's going to be something about his life in particular. And then the rest of the nights that we have, we're going to continue what we had started last year because it was important enough. So as a reminder, let's see if you remember. What did we do last year? Huh? Yeah, what did you say in the back there? The fast. We fasted last year too, alhamdulillah. Word. Good one. Yes, the letter to Malik al-Ashtar, right? And if you remember, this is the longest letter in Nahjul Balagha, and we barely covered 1/5 of this letter. So I wanted to extend it again this year, and then inshallah we'll leave it for the rest of you to read after that. I've noticed if I continue the same topic for 3 years or more, that's when the complaint birds start, that he doesn't have anything new to talk about. But that's ignorance of people, but what can you do about that, right? So as a reminder about the letter that we've talked about, this is letter number 53 in Nahjul Balagha. And it was a letter or an instruction, really, that Imam Ali alayhi salam, who was the Khalifa at that time, had written to Malik al-Ashtar when Malik was appointed the governor of Egypt in the year 38 after Hijrah. And so 35-ish, the Imam alayhi salam became the Khalifa. 36 is when Siffin happened, and 38 is when 36, 37 is when Siffin happened, and 38 is when Imam appointed Malik officially as the governor of Egypt. Before that, Muhammad bin Abi Bakr was the son of Abu Bakr, was the governor of Egypt, but he was also appointed by Imam Ali. We gave the history of Muhammad bin Abi Bakr. He was the one who was raised in the household of Imam Ali alayhi salam, very close to the Imam. And he was given the position of the governor of Egypt. But what happened was that in Egypt in particular, there was a lot of dissent that was taking place. There was a group of people who were still upset at the death of Uthman, and they blamed our first Imam for his death. And so there was a lot of fires that Muhammad bin Abi Bakr constantly had to put out there, and he wasn't able to govern effectively. At the same time, after the Battle of Siffin, Muawiyah decided that he wanted to take over Egypt. And so he sent Amr ibn As to Egypt. And Amr ibn As joined forces with these people who are known as the deserters. The deserters were those who deserted Imam Ali and stuck to Uthman. They refused to go to Imam Ali alayhi salam's bay'ah. So Amr ibn As, who was coming with Muawiyah's seal of approval, and the deserters joined forces, and they were almost on the verge of overthrowing Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, who was assigned as the governor by Imam Ali. And so Imam Ali recognized the precarious position that Muhammad bin Abi Bakr was in, and so he assigned the position of governorship to Malik al-Ashtar, right? And when Malik was given this position, Malik comes from a military background. Malik comes from a position where everyone knows the name of Malik, and it instills an automatic awe and fear of that name. And so when Muawiyah heard that Malik had been now appointed the governor, he realized that his plans were going to backfire because he would not be able to overthrow if Malik was in charge. And so what Muawiyah does is what Muawiyah does, right? Muawiyah bribed a ruler or a land, what do we call this? A tribal leader, right? A tribal leader in the area of Arish. He knew that Malik would pass by the area of Arish to get to Misr. And so he bribed the tribal leader of that area. And so the tribal leader invited Malik to his house for a meal. He was a tribal leader, so he wanted to host the next governor. And in that, he poisoned Malik al-Ashtar at the behest of Muawiyah, and Malik never made it to be the governor of Egypt. That's the sad history of the companions of Imam Ali, and that's the sad history of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But in this letter, really an amazing instruction that was provided to Malik. He talks about what it takes to be a leader and what it takes to rule over people. And I think at the same time, we have to not only look at it from that lens, that what it takes to be a leader, and we're all leaders in some ways or another. Remember, we talked about that. But also we have to look at this from the lens of, if Imam alayhi salam was saying that this is how one should govern, then this is how the Imam was governing. And we can get a glimpse to the beautiful system of governance that the Imam alayhi salam had in place when he was the Khalifa. And that's why the people were able to they were able to experience justice during the time in Kufa that they had never experienced before, right? When you look at one of the reasons why the people of Kufa wrote letters to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam for him to come to Kufa, there are numerous factors to that, right? It's not that they had love of wilaya in them. They didn't, right? If you remember, Kufa, as we will touch upon this letter, Kufa was a stronghold of Umar. Umar started the Kufa, right? And even when Imam Ali was in Kufa, he noticed, for example, the people in the month of Ramadan would still pray their Taraweeh in the month of Ramadan because this is the Sunnah of Umar, right? And so he would send Imam al-Hassan, he would talk to the people and saying, what are you doing? The Prophet had never told us to pray like this. And the response of the people was what? Wa sunnata Umara, wa sunnata Umara. Oh, he wants to kill the Sunnah of Umar. He wants to stop the Sunnah of Umar. And when Imam saw this madness that the people had, he said, there's nothing you can do about this, right? There's nothing. And so the Imam even didn't continue pushing that particular agenda forward. But what that tells us is that when the people wrote to the people of Kufa, wrote to Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, inviting him to come to Kufa, it wasn't because they were loyal to Imam al-Hussein, but rather they had tasted justice with Ali that they had never tasted after again. Yeah? They had seen what life was like when somebody was adil, when somebody was not a fasiq, when somebody was not corrupt. And so they longed for that. It had been 20 years, right? Almost 18 years of Muawiyah and now Yazid coming into power, that they wanted again to taste that justice that Ali had provided for them. And so they invited him. So it gives us a beautiful glimpse to how the Imam alayhi salam used to govern. So we come to this letter now. So that we have covered numerous topics already. We covered previously that the Imam begins the letter with broad pieces of advice. He talks about taqwa, he talks about the importance of obedience to Allah, to be God's helper, and the importance of controlling the nafs. We touched upon all of that last year. The Imam talked about what the qualifications of a governor should be and who should be a leader, because not everybody can be a leader. Everybody may want to be a leader, but not everybody can be a leader. And so he talks about that aspect of qualifications and the responsibilities that come with being a leader, and then the importance of respecting the rights of all people. In this, in now where we are continuing, the Imam alayhi salam in this part talks about how Malik needs to constantly rule in favor of the masses. Nothing's coming up there. So the Imam alayhi salam says, the most beloved path for you, yani for you, O Malik, should be that which is the most equitable with regards to rights or with regards to haqq, and the most universal with regards to justice, and unanimous or comprehensive with regard to the... Here nothing comes on the screen. Sorry, here is fine. Sorry. And with regard to agreement that is under you. So he, again, let me read that again. He says the most beloved, thank you so much. The most beloved path for you should be that which is the most equitable with regards to rights or haqq, and the most universal with regards to justice, and unanimous with regards to the agreement amongst those under you. What the Imam alayhi salam is saying to Malik here is that Malik, as a leader, your responsibility is not to look after your own affairs, is not to do that which makes you happy. Rather, your responsibility is to make sure that the people whom you are leading are happy. Right? A lot of times leaders will come with their own agendas. That, okay, this is what I've always wanted to do, now I can do this because I'm in power. I'll be giving a lot of Trump examples, right? Because it just fits so well, to be quite honest. Even last year we did that, but it honestly fits really well. You look at, for example, what he did. As soon as he came into power, one of the first things he did or tried to do was repel Obamacare. Why? Because I don't want Obamacare. I want to raise, I don't want any more tax hikes on the elite. Everything that he came to do was not what the people wanted. Right? If you looked at what the people wanted these things that were effective and beneficial for them. But he came in with this idea that I'm going to do that which is beneficial for me. And the Imam cautions Malik and says, Malik, you shouldn't do that. You should come into power with the idea that first and foremost, you need to be fair and equitable with regards to haqq, or with regards to rights. Right? And what that means is that, Malik, you should never favor a certain group of people over others. You should be fair. Right? It doesn't matter that these people are your family, for example. It doesn't matter that these people may be your tribal associations. It doesn't matter if these people share your skin color, culturally, whatever it is, Malik, that you need to learn to be fair. And when you are able to be fair with people, what that does is that makes you look at them on how to govern them and not what your connections are to them. Does that make sense or no? Right? If I'm favoring people, it's because I have certain connections with you, and therefore I'm governing in my interest, not in the interest of people. This is also obviously important when it comes to, for example, a classroom and you have students, not to be unfair when it comes to that. Or when it comes to children and the responsibilities of being fair and just to all the children. So the first way in which we bring about this equality or to look after the affairs of the people is we are fair and equitable with rights. And then the second thing that Imam alayhi salam says is that we need to be universal with regards to matters of justice. So I don't look to see who has committed the crime. Right? It doesn't matter who has done it. As long as the crime has been done, a certain punishment has to be laid out. Whether that person was a believer, whether that person was of a certain skin color, all of that doesn't matter. What matters is that a law was broken and we have to be consistent. If I'm going to be lenient with you, I have to be lenient with all. If I'm going to be harsh with one, I have to be harsh with all. But there has to be a consistency in how we do that. And the third is that the Imam says something very beautiful. He says, and don't change that in which there is a unanimous agreement amongst those of the people. So for example, if the people had voted on something and that they had decided that this is what they want, then don't come in there with your own agendas to change the things that the people had agreed upon. Now this is different than when a leader decides what the people want without the people having a say-so. But we say that when the people had a say-so in this matter, and when the people had established something, then no leader should come and change those things simply because it doesn't fit with their particular thinking or it doesn't fit with their particular agenda. This is how, when one does these three things that the Imam alayhi salam mentions, they show the people that the primary concern in their governance is them, rather than my own selfish whims and desires. This is how a democracy really should work, right? Or this is how a governance should work, where it's for the people. But we see that today, like in the governance that the Western world that we live in, and the beacons of democracy that they hold themselves to be, yet they don't meet these criteria that the Imam mentions. They specifically cater for special interest groups. They specifically cater for lobbyist groups. They specifically cater for those who are special interest groups, whatever it is, right? And so you find that the peoples are never represented, even though they claim to be a democracy. The people are never represented. Rather, these special groups who can lobby and change the way laws are done are the ones who are represented. And so what the Imam alayhi salam is preaching is the ideal form of government. Now, it takes a very special leader to be able to do that, right? And that's why we've seen throughout history that majority have failed, because that position of leadership is very, very addictive, right? It's very intoxicating. I think the Imam had mentioned something like that previously. And so this is something that we always have to remember, that what the Imam alayhi salam is saying here is not easy, but this is the expectation. And then the Imam explains why there should be a form of justice throughout, and the justice that exists everywhere. He says this is because the disagreement of the common people sweeps away the agreements of the chiefs, right? The reason why you should look after the people is because if there is a disagreement amongst the common people, then whatever the chiefs had decided will be thrown out the window, because they will rise. Yeah, they will make a fuss about it. And the disagreement, while the disagreement of the chiefs can be disregarded when compared with the agreement of the common people, right? So if you have like these elite members who control everything and they want something else, but if the people united and they said this is really not what we want, right? It doesn't matter then what the chiefs want. The people will get their way, right? There's a lot to dissect here. It's really beautiful what the Imam alayhi salam is saying. First off, when the Imam alayhi salam talks about the common people, and then he talks about the chiefs, in today's language, that would be the 1%ers versus the rest, right? The 1%ers, this was something that was really big a few years ago when there was a lot of activism on this, and it still exists, right? That there are those who are amongst the elite, they're the 1%ers. And then there are the rest of us who are the other 99%, and the other 99% have many different classes within it. But what the Imam alayhi salam says is that we should always, in our leadership, cater for the other, never the 1%, right? And this is opposite of how it works, right? Again, like I mentioned, lobbyist groups, wealthy CEOs, all of these moguls are the ones who are the 1%ers, and things are done for them, right? You look at governments, tax laws are passed for the 1%ers. It doesn't matter that the other 99% suffer, but tax laws are passed for this, right? And the problem that the Imam alayhi salam here talks about is that the only way the common people can have their way is if the common people unite on their agendas, right? Because he talks about the agreements of the common people, and the disagreement of the chiefs has nothing compared to the agreement of the common people. But if the common people never unite, then the chiefs continue doing what they want to do, right? They keep doing what they want to do. And so the problem is of the common people, alaykum salam, that the people, that they don't find ways of uniting. Now obviously on one hand, the ruling class is not, they're not silly, right? They know that as long as they can divide and conquer, they're always going to get their way. So for example, you have this whole movement of, for example, America first, Canada first, right? Of a certain group of people who are quote unquote Canadian, and then everybody else is not a Canadian. And so what have they done? They've divided, right? They've divided the people. You look at, for example, white nationalism, and what white nationalism does is that, and what Trump continues to promote is this image that white people are the elite and then everyone else is that. And what they forget is that 85 to 95% of those quote unquote white Americans or white Canadians belong to the other. They're not the wealthy elite. But they've been tricked to say, look, side with us and you'll get your way, when they haven't gotten their way, right? We again see a movement today of people who had voted for Trump because Trump had promised a whole bunch of things, and now they're like, nothing was delivered. The trade tariffs to China are hurting us. The trade tariffs with Mexico are going to hurt. All of these things where they felt that they were privileged, right? But they didn't do anything, right? And the problem a lot of the times is that there is a fear that the others have of rising up against the chiefs, right? There's a lot of these fears that they have. So for example, one of the fears that they have is of losing what they already have. So for example, I feel like I've worked so hard over the course of these years, and now if I rise up against these people, what if they take away my things? Right? So they'll take away my belongings. They may take away my freedom. Right? This is what people who rose up against Saddam sacrificed. Right? They sacrificed their freedom. Many went to jail because of what they rose against Saddam. Many were killed because they rose against Saddam. But they rose, right? But others did not rise. Why? Because they feared. This is that same fear that when the Prophet would tell people it's time for jihad, they would say, I can't go. I can't go. Right? That when Imam al-Hussein would meet people on the way to Karbala and he would say, come with me, they would say, here, have my horse instead. I can't come though. Right? And why? Because there was a fear of losing what they had. And that exists till today in different forms, right? That if I speak up against injustice, I'm going to be ostracized within my own community. I'm not going to be taken serious within my own community. And so there's a fear. There's a fear, and this fear, most interestingly, is that it exists within the middle class, primarily. It's really interesting. So if you Google different classes, financial classes of people, according to certain studies, there are 7 classes of people, or there are 6 classes. You have the elite, wealthy, okay? And then after the wealthy class, and amongst them there are classes too, but then there's a certain category where you're considered to be elite and wealthy. Then you have the middle class, and then you have the working class, and then you have the working poor, and then you have the poor class, right? Anyone from middle class to below, so middle class could be the second rung, so middle class may be the third rung. You have the super elite, then you have the wealthy class, then you have the middle class. You'll find that the people who are most likely to stand up and protest against injustices are those of the bottom 3 rungs, or the bottom 4 rungs. The poor, the working poor, and the working middle class. Right? Because they feel the strongest injustices, and B, they don't have much to lose, right? If I already don't have things to lose, what am I going to lose, right? You find that the people who are most hesitant to stand up for their rights are the middle class, right? And most of us, I think, are in the middle class, right? Why? Because we feel that there is most to lose for us, right? So that's number one. That's why we don't stand up for things that are just, right? We don't stand up for injustices because we have the most to lose. And the second reason, and this is like the greatest trick of the American dream, if we can call it, is that the middle class feel that very soon they're going to be upper class, right? And so why do I sacrifice when very soon, and that's a trick, they're never going to get to the upper class, right? They're never going to. But it's a trick that it plays when you see someone and you say, you know what, if I work hard enough, I'm going to get there, so why should I sacrifice right now, right? And you see this, it's very true that today we have an entire group of people who are activists within our communities, but they are not people who are middle-aged. They're not. They're mostly young people. Why are they mostly young people? Because they don't have much to lose right now, right? They don't have a mortgage. They don't have kids. They don't have this. They don't have that. But once you get those things, you're less likely to stand up for haqq because you have more to lose. And that's something that's really interesting what the Imam talks about. We have to learn to unite, right? And if we can learn to unite, and if you look at that from all these different scales, if the Shia united, subhanallah, imagine how strong we would be, right? Imagine, here in the GTA we have what, 17, 18 Shia centers, right? All torn apart through different beliefs in ulama and different beliefs in marjaiyat. It's sad, of course it's sad. It's a sense of pride when you talk to people outside the GTA, they'll be like, how many centers do you have? You have 20, mashallah. Yeah? It's not mashallah for us here. I wish we could work better. I wish we could, right? But there are too many problems, unfortunately. Now imagine if we're not united and then we want to unite the ummah. The home is not united first, right? And the same exists for, it's not just the Shia, right? I'm not just saying this. I work a lot with the Sunni imams. And they have the same conflicts with their different mosques. So this mosque will not attend that mosque. And it's not just us, alhamdulillah, right? It's just the power of shaitan is such that it affects everybody like this, where shaitan prefers disunity. Because shaitan recognizes the moment we become united, there's nothing that can stop us. Nothing that can stop us. So I think we need to work on that, right? And how, inshallah, following the advice of Imam alayhi salam will teach us how we can be united and how we can work together, inshallah, to overcome the injustices that we see in our world today. We'll end here and continue tomorrow, inshallah. Tomorrow, we will start the lecture. We'll do a 15-minute lecture and then we'll play a game of Menti, inshallah. So please bring your phones so that we can spend time faster and better, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala